So leadership alchemy, forging great leaders. And you see the pretty boy on there, but it's not just credibility, uniform and stuff. But and plus, people see with their eyes first, so. But it's
Oh
really
yeah.
about leadership. It's not about how we talk about leadership in the Navy. It's about that too, but it's also we're talking about empathy, talking about people you surround yourself with, and the culture. Your culture puts you in a leadership. It affects your leadership
Right.
role of leadership. What's the word? Leadership capabilities.
The fact that you wrote 4 books, bro, that's just awesome, man. One of my goals is to write a book here soon with MIl2Vet to kind of correlate everything that we've been discussing in here to put it into written format, kind of mapping out what we've been learning this entire path. Because I tell you what, man, you spend a long time in a subject, you're gonna start mastering some things and start hearing some really powerful messages, and it's like we really look forward to getting to a point where we could actually do that.
And let me know what help you need. I'm here to support.
So, I like the embrace of the greetings. What was it? You said that you like being treated how you like being treated. Well, was there something that lit that little fire underneath you that was like, you know what? I'm going to start writing all this. So what was it that got you so engulfed in doing that?
So you have situations. People always say in the Navy, we was type of leaders we were, right? And we would go say we treated everybody the same, no matter who it was. Division, hey, if we tried to treat everybody the same, brother. But I looked at it the fact that with that embrace the power of greetings, it came to a path where you had to meet people where they are. Because people say, how did you get this person? This guy gave me the hardest time, or this girl gave me the hardest time. It's just talking to them, just talking to people like they come in, meeting them in the spot they in, and I was able to not say manipulate, but to convince them to do something bigger than themselves. And that what made me write about it. It made me start writing about how do I get people just a simple greeting, hello, or goodbye, or how are you doing? So I will also share this. I was in Japan some years ago. I met this young man. I was walking down the pier, and he saluted me. And I genuinely asked him, how you doing? And as soon as I did that, he was like, sure, do you have a moment? And that started the moment. So we talking, and we went through some stuff and talked about God and talked about life and my triumphs and my trials and tribulations and different things, and talked about his stuff, what he was going through. But he shared with me during that conversation that he was planning to go hurt himself. But I basically stopped him from hurting himself. I stopped him in his path and asked him just authentically, how are you doing? And that's what made me start writing about it, because I said, meet people where they are, treat people like you want to be treated. So when I was going through my depression, my little stage I was going through here a few months ago, I just really thought about the young man. But the young man's a lieutenant in the Navy right now. And I looked at his success story. He's doing well. He's helping other people get commissioned. And also, it just helped me in my journey. So I just started writing about it.
Yeah, it's those little acts of kindness, right, that really make a difference and can have instrumental impact on somebody's life. Was he an officer at the time when you talked to him?
He's the first class.
So something as small as a mustard seed grows into a gigantic bush, right? And that's kind of a biblical thing that a lot of us believers hear and see in scriptures that we read. It's kind of like that. That greeting could be that little mustard seed in somebody's life.
Mhm. And it goes back to Chris. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't cut you off.
No, you're good. Did you think that your greeting would inspire somebody to become an officer and do all that?
You know what? I really didn't never thought of. I never thought about that from that standpoint. But what I do think about it, and I tell people, I just what you get with me is what you get. You get David Sledge. You get the guy that's going to go out his way to help another service members, anybody. I help people in church, outside of church. I just had a meeting today with a young lady. She's inspiring. She's a coach, life coach, doing some things, and I just met with her for coffee. And she said, man, you just gave me something. You gave me some inspiration just to get started. Because she got social media and all that stuff, but she's not doing anything with it. So today just really helped. So I really thought that my just speaking and just being genuine and authentic would help people, and it would get people to be motivated and do something bigger than themselves.
I just realized I was muted. So
He's like, we turn up the volume.
no, I just realized that I was muted. No, that's beautiful, man. That's being able to create that and inspiration to be able to move forward without actually wanting anything in return, and just really the success of the people. It's kind of what, in my ideal world, what everybody should aspire to. But I know that that's not how the world works, unfortunately. But seeing that and hearing that is beautifully said.
Also, too, just to add to that, my son and I talk about it a lot. My wife, actually, my whole family talk about it. We was overseas for a long time as a family, and then we, the places we got. And so if we don't look at it from that standpoint when it comes to anybody, because people are gonna treat you bad, people are gonna do whatever they're gonna do, but again, that's between them and God
Right.
when they do that. And I tell people, I said, blessings that I'm able to give other people comes back to me twofold. Because even though I still got life, I woke up this morning, I was in my right mind this morning. I put my feet on solid ground this morning, like they said about, and I'm able to help others. So I'm just gonna continue to do that. Just continue to speak blessings and continue to help other people as much as I can. As long as I have breath in my body, I'll continue to do that.
Return2Roots podcast. Welcome. Today we bring you David Sledge, retired after 33 years of military service as a CW5. Without further ado, David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So for everybody that's out there, I want to highlight the fact that a CW5, it's one of the most difficult ranks to attain. You go through a lot of selection boards. You have to be enlisted. You have to do, and then for you to be able to get chosen as CW5. David, what is the percentage of people that actually get selected to CW5?
It's 1%.
1% of people that apply. Yeah.
Yes, it's only 92 in the entire Navy at one time.
All right, for the record, David, would you, knowing everything that you know, would you have done Chief Warrant Officer again?
Oh yeah, honestly, I would.
There we go. All right, man, after our own heart, brother. Hey, before we go too far into this episode, man, what is the best way for the MIl2Vet tribe to get a hold of you?
So I am on Instagram. I'm on the Greet One, Meet One, Teach One, and also on the LinkedIn under my name, David Sledge. And you can also, if you want to email me, my email address is dlsledge42@gmail.com.
Buddy, hey, you guys will be able to see his contact information into the information on this podcast or YouTube channel or Rumble channel. Make sure you guys hit subscribe after you guys hit David Sledge up. And all right, David. So, what is your book or social media or TV show or movie that you recommend people to digest while they're going through the transition after you've gone through years? What do you think would have helped you out?
I think the first book that I would tell anybody, and I think we all know it, is the Bible, especially with the things going on in the world. And I read Psalms 91, the entire chapter. And my mother talked about it when she was living. She tells us all the time. But Psalms 91 is the best book best chapter that I can just for people to read during the transition. But also, I wrote a book myself, and what happened with that book, what helped me along the transition, was it says embrace blessings. Can I show the book?
Of
Go
course.
ahead, bro. We want to see that book. Shameless plug right
So
here.
this is right here. This is embrace blessings, trust in the process, and finding purpose. So I think he's a good looking guy. I think too, Chris, to answer your question, the biggest reason I talk about the book, because when I was going through my process and transition, I shared earlier with someone that I went through a little bit of depression, because you go from being in a position or being in the service for all these years. I came in, I was 19. So I did 33 years. So now I'm 53. So at the time I retired, I was 52. So I was kind of institutionalized, but also I understood that it was things that I needed to do to prepare myself. And I did all the ETAPs. I went through a lot of the programs to get myself prepared. But the reality set in is that I did all this preparing, but I had to make sure I didn't do it in my mind. I did it, if this makes sense. I did it because it needed to be done. I had a check sheet, but the check sheet I did not use was that I had to remember that patience, you have to have patience with this process, because the VA appointments, you have a lot. You have to go through to get your percentages. You got to go to all these appointments. You got to get this done. You got to get everything poked and prawn. You got to do all this. And then also you got to do paperwork, make sure all your stuff is right, because if not, whatever percentage you get is what you get. And then you had 180 days to 90 days to do your BBD before detachment. And if you don't do that, then it holds up the process as far as getting your VA status. But, I would say, again, too, is that I talked to other service members that was going through. I went through the process prior to me, and they gave me a lot of good notes and good things to do. But mentally, I was not prepared for what I went through in time. But the process itself, it didn't seem that hard, but the process in my mind was harder than I made it harder than what it was supposed to be.
I want to dive into that a little bit, right? Some of us are prepared, some of us are not prepared, right? And then with that, you mentioned the most difficult part that nobody really fully embraces and or talks about is the part of and emotionally preparing yourself. What advice would you give someone that's going to be retiring or someone that's going to join the Navy today, right? Advice would you tell them to be able to get to that mindset after doing 33 years in the service?
I think the biggest thing that I would tell them is just trust in the Lord and pray about it. And I was praying. I was going to say I didn't pray, but just really, we always say God has a plan for us, and we also understand. But we say that, but we have to really, really mean that. So my advice to a young person that's joining the military is go through the process, have a plan. We always will have plans, but you have to execute those plans too. So execute your plans, have them written down, have a written plan, and then just always, it's a process, always update your plan. Just because you have a plan, it may not work out like the military, it may not work out like you want to, so you can have a backup. So have a backup plan is what I would do if I had to do it all over again. My backup plan, I had a plan, I had everything written out, had everything ready to go. But the backup, what is my backup plan if I can't get this? What would I do?
You know what you just said right there, brother, about having a plan? And everybody's like, God, where you sit on the faith spectrum? People are like, well, it's in God's hands, right? God gave us free will. If that's what you're believing in, God gave us free will. And God may have a plan for you, but it is your job to execute. 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 You got to get out there and you got to do it. God's not going to do those things for you. Nobody else is going to do those things for you. Nobody's going to sit down and plan obsessively about what the next thing is. Just like the greats out there, man. Michael Jordan probably shot over 1 million hoops over and over and over again, doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's boring, even though I don't want to, it's raining outside. The greats, the goats, as they call them, they consistently do something that nobody else wants to do over and over and over and over again. And you can plan all you want, but if you don't execute, it's just a dream. Thanks for pointing that out, man.
And then, Chris, if I may add too, okay, so one thing also, a lot of people, and I can't say I'm not quiet, but I am reserved in what I do. So sometimes I question, should I do this? And I would add to, if you're trying to do something, you got to ask questions. If you don't ask a question, you never get an answer. And that's what I would tell people, just the transition and coming in. You don't have to say why all the time, but it's something I found out after I retired. Why has got to be right in the middle, because if we're trying to execute a mission, and so we need to know why, when, and where, and how. We need to know that. But a lot of times we get in our mind that we don't need to know why. We just, because I said so. But now you don't have that. You have nobody telling you what to do all the time. So now the transition, you have to make sure that your transition is only going to be as good as you make it, and the people you surround yourself with to help you with that transition, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, I can sit back in my little corner and just go through the little check sheet, and then when the VA calls, I deal with it. But I was calling the VA, and I was getting my appointments, and I was doing this, I was doing everything else I needed to do to make sure that I was successful in my journey to get my disability. because I got a lot of problems, but you have to be willing to sustain and just keep pushing forward to get yourself done and ask those questions.
And so you went through a lot of transitions, civilian to joint chief to chief warrant officer. As you were going through those transitions in the military, do you ever think about what was making you successful in those transitions and allowing you the mind, the proper planning to be able to be successful at the next level?
So, Yogi, I would say this, and there's a couple of things I'm gonna say about that particular question. Again, I go back, and I don't want to overdo too much of what I say about my faith, but I can't hide it. So, one, I know I had to pray about it. I had my wife, Tony. She's been with me since I was an E3. I met her when I was an E3 in the Navy. So it was times that I just knew that when I made E5, I stayed E5 for like 7.5 years. Couldn't make first class, and I made first class, and 2 years later I made chief. You know, my that me held me accountable was her. But I would say transitions from going from E3 to E4 all the way up to to chief, and then from chief to warrant. But also the people that I was with, and people, civilians I worked with, they helped me, and I saw things when I talked about when I started writing. I just talked about the things that I saw, good and different. I put it in my toolbox, and I went forward. But also at the same time, trials and tribulations to all that. It was not easy. I can't say it was easy, and nothing's easy, but it makes you work harder. So as I with things, I got in the books. I asked questions of people. I had a saying, or I hear people say this all the time. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself by smart people. You don't have to be the smartest cook in the jar. Surround yourself by other smart cookies, and that's what I did. And so that helped me with my transition. You had to give credit where credit's due, because you can't. I can't. David Sledge can't do it by himself.
Now, you just started your retirement about a year ago. And with that, you have been going through the whole process of going through. What advice and how early would you give anyone that's looking at getting out, retirement? Um, you mentioned it a little bit earlier about the mindset thing and about being able to get mentally and emotionally uh, for the transition. What advice would you give to someone that's about to start the transition or is thinking about getting out or retiring from the military so that they can be successful both mentally and emotionally and in their careers?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we have to prepare. Again, what Chris and I were talking about earlier is preparing yourself, having that plan, right, and executing it. I think a lot of
Right.
times we all do this. We all think at one time, oh, we gonna stay in the military, we're gonna stay in our job forever. You know, and so my if to somebody that's planning on either knowing to get out, I always tell my sons, you either have a 6 month plan, a year plan, out to a 2 to 3 year plan, and then a 5 year plan. So I would say within 5 years, and I kind of do, but within 5 years of knowing that you're planning on retiring or getting out. Now, sometimes medicine, medical stuff, you can't do nothing about those. But you yourself, you should always be doing that, really, because like for your stuff, you should always, if you got a headache, you got to stub your toe, go to medical. People, in my time, my day, it was like, oh, you be a sick bando, right? But at the same time, if you're sick, go to medical, because if you're gonna get somebody else. So always plan your exit. Again, you have a goal, but also look at your exit. So like if you start a business, right? And your business, you may not want to be in that, but most people don't want to be in that business forever. They looking for an exit plan. Magic Johnson was a perfect example. He said when he started his business, his plan was to exit these businesses. He was going to get them up, get them going, do what he needs to do, and then pass on to somebody else that can use it. Somebody else can do it. So the same thing with you. You have to think that way, is that you need to have that plan. So within 2 years of getting ready to retire, you need to have that plan going executed, because 180 days, that months, you need to be 180 days, not even 6 months, 180 days. You need to be ready to do your medical and all that stuff, right? But the 2 year mark, you need to, because they say go to TAPS and ETAPS and all that stuff, right? And so I would do 2 years or 3 years, maybe the 3 year, I would go to TAPS and learn some stuff about the transition. And then 2 years, I would, for you can probably do TAPS 3 times before you get out. That would be my recommendation. And it's the crazy thing about it, even though you go to TAPS, because the TAPS changes like everything else. It's new information, 3 times and better, but around get people in your circle, like we talk about some people like Maurice Wilson and those guys, learn like you're doing, talk to them early because they know some things. And I found out too in my transition is that there's people that's in a small business, SBA, and the Chamber of Commerce, there's a military too. And guess what? They went through the same process I did. And they're helping with that position. Answer your question. Yeah.
Now let's see. Oh, that answers it perfectly. Now, you have written multiple books. And as we spoke before, you have always been writing in your journals and stuff like that. But what inspired you to actually publish a book?
You know, and I get that question all the time. And I think too is, we stuff, we have little nuggets that we always have, right? Little sayings and different things that we write down and we may pass it on to somebody else, goes back to chief initiation. Your book, I ain't gonna say, you got your vessel and you write in your book, right? And they'll tell you, hey, help me survive and this helped me do this. So what I wanted to do, and I thought about that too, my process, and then some other things I went through in some other organizations, is that I wanted to put it in writing. I wanted people to be able to say, you know what, I'm leaving my legacy. This is a legacy for me. It's something for other people to be able to take and learn from and in their daily lives. And that's why I put it on paper. A friend of mine told me about it. Ron McMillan, he retired too. Him and I pushed boots together back in the day. I looked at him. He was a motivator. He was always the kind of person, but he's always the guy that he just knew how to do stuff. But I found out he's just like me. On a daily basis, he was trying to figure out his things. But he read a couple of books and he was like, "Hey, Dave, you need to just go ahead and just put it out there." So I self-published. And when I self-published and then people start reading, it was like, man, we need more of that. So now it just makes it, writing and helping people. But also too, Yogi, out this, another reason I've been writing so much is because when I have my days, my ups and my downs, my inflows, I write writing. Because I have days that, days are good and better than others. So when I start feeling that way, I just write.
I've used writing as a channel to go through your transition yourself and to also express your going inside of you and to be able to clear your head per se.
Yes, it's a testimony. It's my testimony. It may not say nothing about my name in there, but it's my testimony of things that I've seen and what I'm dealing with on a daily basis. And Chris earlier we was having a conversation about things that people may say. If today I'm some things I'm gonna go back and write down in my journal, and I think about it. I have to pray on it and figure out how I want to put it out. But I think some of the things we talked about definitely other people can use. And I think it's the thing that you guys are doing with the MIl2Vet is really it's empowering for the fact that you're a platform and you're getting other people you got helping us with our transition. This is a help with the transition because I watch some of the other and looking at and talk to you in person, Yogi, and I'm just like because it inspires me to help others more and to help with the transition. And I've ran into people that have their own business. They have nothing to do. It's got nothing to do with vets, but they're helping people because they're veterans themselves. They're actually helping us with our transition. So I wanted to do the same.
Dude, I absolutely love that, man, and thank you for saying that. It really does mean a lot to hear that. Often we find ourselves creating stuff, and we don't know if anybody's actually paying attention. So to hear that from you, man, that really does. Thank you. What does it take for you to get into your creative state?
So what does it take to get to it?
How do you get into your creative state?
You know what? I'll be honest with you, Chris. I think so. I'm thinking of something in my mind because a friend of mine, JD, always tell me, "Man, you always got something in your mind." I just keep stuff in my mind. I just keep stuff like just in my book here, right? This is one of my writing books. If I get something, I write it down. And I go back and I look at it later because I can't. It's 24 hours in a day. You know what I'm saying? You got to get some sleep. 8 hours of that, 8 hours, I spend time with my wife too. But just the biggest thing that helps me be creative is quiet time. And then sometimes, like I said a few minutes ago, sometimes the things I'm going through makes me get into that creative space and just start writing. A bad day, but I'm not gonna write about a bad day. I'm gonna write about how I can come out of this day. I can get my mind back, focus on what I need to be focused on.
I think trials and tribulations and things that people think that are bad create an environment where you're motivated to make something, either change or record your thoughts on it. I honestly think that that's what happens in those moments if you channel it correctly. Because this podcast, it started out of despair. It started out of a place of despair, not in a place where we were like, oh, we're so happy, let's create a podcast because we're so happy. I feel incredibly blessed every single time I get to sit down with people of your magnitude, anybody that's been on our show, because afterwards, that's when I actually enter in my creative state, is after having conversations with brothers and sisters that come on this show. I think conversations and then time to reflect on those. I think negative events and then time to reflect. And it's okay to be down. It's okay to be negative thought. Have a negative thought. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I can't have this negative thought. No, have that negative thought. Get it out of you. Because if you try to hide it and you try to suppress it, it just builds up, right? And it explodes. Something that you talked about a little bit earlier, you're like, I was institutionalized. 33 years in the military. You were 19 years old. You had maybe a year of being on your own before you joined.
5
Right?
days, I was in boot
5 days, right? So you didn't even know what it was like on the outside. So in state, or in essence, we're all institutionalized. But the longer you stay in, the deeper rooted that institutionalization, I'm not sure if I made up that word, but the deeper that happens. So I think what you said earlier was the 5 W's, right? Who, what, when, where, how, right? Is that thing right there? We're used to getting those questions as senior enlisted leaders, as officers and stuff like that. They're always like, oh, what's the 5 W's on this? And you provide it, right? But the thing is we're used to doing that, but we're not used to having the rudder in our hands and navigating our own ship through our transition. And Maurice Wilson calls it the sea of goodwill, which is great because we're all sailors here. We love that. But you got to have your own rudder, and you got to ask that why in between there. I just really wanted to say that I love that. What example have you had where you're like, this is how it is, and then you're like, but why? And then you found a different path?
Well, I think that one of the biggest examples is, brothers mate, being enlisted, we did a lot of pack fires, right? 5-inch I was on 7.6 for a while on frigates for a long time. And just shoot all the time. I was like, the question was, why are we always shooting this gun? Because we never shoot it to hit anybody. But I questioned, but then I figured out the why piece came up. We had to actually shoot some dowels. We had to shoot some what they call it, shoot across people's bows. And I was like, but at the time, we weren't doing that. And then it came to pass that the reason we was doing these things because we had to test the system to make sure the system was ready to go. So if you didn't test the system and you just put the in there and shoot them and it comes back on you, it happened to the USS Iowa. The doors, they didn't do things they need to do procedure wise, right? So the why we doing it, but then I found out later on the why was because we put in situations, Horn of Africa, different places that we had to shoot across people's bows and we had to give them warning shots. So that's one of the biggest things that help me why wise, Navy wise. But also I forward to now, ask myself why is it so hard to transition out of the military? And I thought it was, I'm saying why, but it's, to me, now I'm looking at it, is it really, really, or is more, like I said earlier, is it more a mental thing than it is a more of a actionable thing, I guess. because tell us things that we in our minds, we see it first, and then it goes in our mind and it seeps to our heart. So we have to remember that the way is that we are human like everybody else, no matter what trade we have, cops, firemen, we all go through transitions. Teachers go through transitions. So the why piece and the answer that came to me was that I just have to trust the process. And you said it earlier, the trials and tribulations, because it's more, you're going to have more trials, you're going to have more tribulations than sometimes you have success. But at the same time, is that we know we're humans, and we have problems, we get on our knees and we pray about it. So I hope that answered what you wanted me, the question you had. But I think that's the why piece. The why is it so hard? But then I figured out it's more of me than it is the actual answer to why going on.
A really good answer in that question, brother. Is finding that why, and that's the reason why I asked that prefix, because what did it take for you to find your purpose after the military? Because you were a chief warrant officer, bro. You were the top dog. Everybody looked up to you. Doesn't matter if they wore a star on their shoulder board or not. They looked up to you, and all that was gone the day you walked out, September 1st.
Mhm.
20 it was all gone. What did it take for you to find your new purpose, bro?
One of the things that helped me find my purpose was the writing piece, but also, and we just talked about it, I found out too, and I didn't say this earlier, was that it's okay not to be okay. Because for years I had a top secret clearance for years, and I couldn't say nothing. Weapons and systems, agents, different things, and all that stuff. I could never say, hey, I had a problem. I had a mental block, and I needed help. I couldn't say, hey, if I said the wrong help, then they put me on pills. I lose my clearance. So what really helped me with my purpose was I went to a conference, still in the Navy, in July. I went to my fraternity's conference, and I heard. So I don't. I'm sure you guys know who Victor Glover is, Captain Victor Glover. He's part of my fraternity, and he's a very dear friend of mine. And he was actually in the same chapter in Japan. But Victor had a during our conference. During that conference, he had a young lady that was a psychiatrist, a couple of doctors, and different, and all that stuff. And they talked about drugs and all that stuff. And what helped me was the fact that I heard what they said about it's okay not to be okay. That was in July last year. So my transition happened. I got out September 1st, right? So between July and September, it showed me, hey, and then I had the book going. I had to embrace blessings. I was already on that one. But somebody asked me about it during that conference, and it helped. And it said purpose, right? It says trusting the process and finding purpose. So I found my purpose during that meeting, but also when I got on the plane and I started thinking about what I needed to do to help other people like myself in transition, that me with my purpose.
So you're doing the books, you're doing education, you're doing leadership. Would you say out really tying them together has helped you with finding your purpose, and it has helped you with ironing out the questions that you had about who you wanted to be and what kind of legacy you wanted to leave behind?
It has, but also too, my days helped me with my purpose too. Because Chris alluded to it. He alluded to it. He talked about it earlier. About my days, right? So I had to understand that even that I had bad thoughts, because I have nightmares, right? But even when I have those times, actually helped me with my purpose. That's another thing that helped. But all the other things we talked about down the road helped. But being vulnerable and being able to express myself and tell other people how I felt, because Chris had it, in rank and being here that's a title, but still being up here and people needed you, and retired, people still need you, but they don't need you as much. That's fine. But also at the same time, as I look at it as, Haynes, people need me. My kids needed me. My wife needed me, but I needed myself. I think myself is what really helped me find purpose, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Um, I would like to elaborate a little bit more on what you mentioned, right? Your bad days helped you find yourself. I think military, we have this big stigma. Though we're trying to get better at it, stigma is still there about seeking and reaching out for mental health, because it's, aside from it being a that you cannot physically see, right? And it's something that can damage and hurt or clearances and or jobs, especially if you're dealing with ammunition, explosives, ordnance. It is something that even for ourselves, we're worried and scared about what we're going through, right? And if we get labeled a certain way, the consequences that we're gonna face, even though we're seeking help, um, with what you know now, would you have changed out and going and talking to someone for mental help, or even like, for example, the chaplain, right? Because the chaplain, everything you tell the chaplain is do you think you would have put yourself in that position?
Uh, I, yes, so I would say this. Um, if I knew what I knew now as far as mental health, because I grew up in the South, and as men, know how they really feel. A lot of us hurt. Get hurt. Guess what? Get up and suck it up. Try it again. You fall off the bike. Get back on the bike again. Right? But what I found out, what I think I would do, as far as see mental health during the times that stuff happened to me, I would have went then. Now, some things was like, like a step limitation or whatever, and it happens over so many years. So I kind of realized it, and I said, you know what, this happened 10 years ago, so I'm not gonna worry about it. But now that I'm retired, everything that I went through in all these years has now I have nothing but I'm looking at the walls, here in the house. And now all this stuff I'm sleeping, all this stuff is starting to come back now and starting to pile up. So yes, I would have went and I would have got help during that time. I should have, but it's never too late. And so, group sessions, I to a therapist every Friday, share what I'm feeling. And she can look at my face and tell me when I'm having issues, and she know I didn't have a good day or good sleep. Definitely do it better if I could do it all over again. But it's never too late. So that's why I'm doing better now. I'm taking care of myself because the back to that is that we never was taking care of us. It was always taking care of somebody else. With family, whether it's your mother, father, brother, sister, wife, sons, daughters, and the sailors or the captain or the people above you. You was always taking care of it. Now, take care of yourself. Get the help you need. Be truthful with yourself. Be vulnerable. That's what I would tell people.
So I love that for someone that myself, right? I didn't seek health. Um, I did talk to the chaplain, where that I personally dealt with all of my crazy stuff by becoming the coordinator, the suicide awareness coordinator, the DAPA, right? And trying to mention trying to help other people. And to me, that was enough help, right? So I thought. But I love the fact that you mentioned that you would have addressed things earlier on, because I do think that addressing it the sooner yields you the better reward, right? It's like compound interest. The more you let it grow, the more you let it sit there, it's gonna compound. And you're right, we are guys, we're meant to, and we usually just compartmentalize things. We just shove them down, and then we try to forget about them, and then we don't tell nobody until one day, like retirement, when everything starts falling um, and shifting gears, and you have more free time, and you start facing all of your demons, and it is harder because now not only are you dealing with the transition, but you're also dealing with this perspective and this mind change of addressing those things in the past. See, a psychologist and a psychiatrist on a consistent basis, and I agree with you that it's been extremely helpful. Um, I was through my stuff before, and I was afraid of clearance and my ordnance handlers. Uh, as I would see, but it's a total different level of care, right? In reality, one of them is there just to listen to you, while the other one is there to listen to you, like you said, and call you out and help you navigate through the things. I personally would say, and I agree with you, that the sooner the better, because it also allows you to have more awareness or where you want your career to go if you address it sooner.
So also, if I may add, something I talked to my wife about and my son about the other day is the question I asked myself: how can I help somebody else with their problem if I have the same problem and I'm not fixing it? Because it's a human nature thing for us to do out and tell everybody else what they need to do, but you can't tell yourself what to do. And that's how I find it.
It's kind of the same thing. It's kind of the same thing about your dog, right? Let's say people, we love our dogs, man. Humans are crazy about taking.
Yeah.
So, we'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars on our dogs, our cats, all that stuff, right? But we won't spend the time to do that little health check that we need to. We'll avoid going to medical, but we'll definitely make sure that we take all our animal doctor, the veterinarian, gives to us, and we are on time with that. Same with our kids, we're on time with that. But whenever it comes to us, ourselves, we're the worst. I really think that there's something there to that we don't find ourselves as important as we should.
Uh-huh.
We should be putting that same mind, that same thought process in our own care versus someone else's care.
Just to clarify, so our audience doesn't think that Chris is eating pills for the dogs. He meant to say that he's feeding his dogs the pills on time. Chris is not taking them. Am I correct, Chris?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
But Chris, you said something a second ago about self care, and my son. So my son has his own stuff he does. Love Project Collective, right? And he talks about self love and self care, and that's something that we really need to do more of. Care ourselves. That's here because you're right. We'll do everybody else. Make sure the kids get it. The baby gets sick. The cough medicine, whatever doc gave him. But for you got to go take a pill. You like, I ain't taking that, or you forget about it because you got your mind doing something else. So we really need to really think about our self care and our self love.
The therapy aspect. I wish the military would embed non partial or third parties that could help us kind of talk about things. It doesn't have to be a therapist, it could be even like or something. I just think that there's got to be some kind of change to get rid of the stigma and also allow us to unpack our compartments to somebody that's trusted. That's like one of the biggest things that I hear is people that have security clearances don't unbag their stuff to the right people. It builds up, and I think that that has kind of security clearance is really kind of hindered because they're not able to decompartmentalize. And I don't know if any statistics about this, but I wonder what the statistics are for people that had a security clearance, can't talk about what they did, um, feel like they can't talk about any of the stuff they did to anybody. I know I signed disclosures too. I understand like things that you just can't talk about that you may have had to be a part of. Could be creating those mental aspects. It's just I wish there was something that could work a lot better, and not and with the system that they have right now does not work. That's my 2 cents. I mean, we could dive completely into this a lot. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
I would also add, like, there's also misinformation, right? And if you talk to the primary care providers or the mental health providers, they'll tell you that it's not true. For the majority, it's not true, right? I think it's also knowledge of the command, right? Per level of the command, what the people in certain chains of command are aware, or because everybody at the end of the day is just trying to protect the sailor, the chain of command, and ultimately the government, right? By doing that and not exposing people to damage their and the sailor's career, I would like to think that they're acting out of a good place in their heart to try to provide what's best for not only themselves but also for the system. Unfortunately, as you mentioned it, Chris, I think it's very difficult balancing act to be able to fully understand and to be able to the right level of so and to hold things back, right? David, you mentioned it, right? There's certain medications that even though they might not necessarily affect how you perform, they will also will ultimately you to where you're not able to be part of that community or that system, right? So unfortunately, it's part of the system. It is part of the things, um, and I do believe that could be a better way. How do you balance that better way? I would say that's a bigger animal that any one of us can sit here and dive. I think we could only talk about our ideas, but we would have to be more educated into how that whole system works behind the curtains to be able to manage that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I say this. So when I was in Bahrain, 2016 to 2018, right? And I was a weapons officer for the base, but I was, security over there. And I think in 17, I want to say 17 to 18, it might have been 18 because a couple of kids killed themselves, and they brought in this team. I can't remember exactly what the team was, but who it was, but they came in and they was embedded within security, and you was able to go, and if you had issues, with the suicide and dealing with other stuff, for the security, the Macedons, man, it is tough out there. They standing 12-hour watches in that heat and all this stuff and all kind of things they were dealing with, and so to be able to go and talk to the therapists and their team. So I think that helped, do it. I have, but I think too at the same time, afraid of the stigma of, did go talk to them. They was because a lot of that stuff again, what I said earlier, it was mental than actual reality. We should be able to go, you both said it, go over there and talk to somebody and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. You talk to the chaplain. The chaplain is going to do so much. The therapist is going to do so much. But then if you don't feel like you have the opportunity or have the resources to do it, you're not going to do it. So that's what I kind of lead with. It's good. It's that's a whole different spectrum, but also we are able to be a part of the solution, and as I'm in some of these meetings and different tables I sit at, I will bring that up, like here people see it, but how can you fix it? Embedding the right people, having people be able to go talk to therapists and have a issue with them talking to a therapist. First came out, you really talk to them. I talked about the medicine, but I saw a lot of kids in Bahrain that got on medicine. They got the gun clause pulled. They got on a red tag list. And I'm like, whoa. So, and then, but they was having issues. They was one of the kids that killed themselves in the bathroom downstairs. He was friends with a lot of people, and them thinking about him, they got their gun claws pulled. And then some people purposely wanted their stuff pulled. They came, they didn't want to carry them more. Or they cross rated.
Yeah, right though. It's like hear about this and they don't know all the details, and then they're like, "Oh, did you hear about so and so?" Yeah, I'm never going to go see somebody for help. You ever see this TV show right here? You ever see this Billions TV show? It's about the stock market.
Okay.
I have a therapist. Her character name is Wendy Rhodes, and played by Maggie Stiff. Anyway, so that TV show, you should take a look at it. They have a counselor that works for the executive and has really deals with a lot of their stuff, but also helps them get past their mental aspect. And it shows how having a coach, therapist, stuff like that can really benefit you. And this guy created this company because of this therapist. This therapist was so well paid because she was able to get him into different areas of your life. Bro,
Mm-hmm.
do you know what therapy did for me? It made me grow like a lot. So it's the power of therapy, and it's whatever you put into it. And if you look at it as an ability to grow, not only grow past your own stuff, but also grow into something else, like this, that person is a sounding board. Like, got that person for a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Use that time wisely. Talk about the stuff that you're thinking about. They could help you grow. That's another aspect that a lot of people don't realize, that therapy can help you out immensely.
And Chris, I'll say this too. You kind of sparked something when you said it. Because I'm it's going to be a life coach, and I say a motivator, not just a life coach, but a motivator to help people with their situations. And but I've talked to other people. I know he's about to retire. Jamal, he's in it. He's in it deep. He did a lot of life coaching, a lot of neuro type coaching, and I talked to him last year, and he actually motivated me to go in the route I was going. And then I'm talking to other coaches, I'm around them, and just giving me little nuggets to be able to, and want to get out there and help others. So you're right. Having those coaches, those motivators, those speakers, and all that stuff is a big part that we need to do too. And that's why I think I'm trying to get into that world. I'm in that world and try to help others as they transition out of the military. And so what he did to me, I just give an example. I mean, because well, I don't know what I want to do. Last year you say, what do you want to do? I don't know what I want to grow up. But you know what I want to do when I grow up? I want to be successful. I'm already successful. I want to be relevant. I want to be relevant. I want to be be a light for somebody that does not have a light right now. That's what I want to do. I want to be relevant in what I'm doing. I want to be, legacy of, hey, this guy will get his shirt off his back. Not, he will literally give it to you. Not just figuratively, but literally give you the shirt off his back. And that's what I look at it when I start thinking about this transition and what I can do to help others.
I love that, man. What did it take for you to get into that right mindset of actually, hey, I'm transitioning?
Honestly, I was in the mindset between June and because I went on terminal leave and I didn't have to go back I had 90 some days of terminal leave, right? So I was, kept telling me, a friend of mine kept saying, David, think about it, dude. You still in the uniform, bro. If they call you right now, you still on the books. You still got to go. If they say, hey, you got to put that uniform on, and I had to go put it back on a couple of times to go do medical appointments and different things, but I wanted to do that. But I think what really set in for me was when I went and got my ID card. I think it was like September 6th something. I went and got Tony and I both went and got our ID cards, right? And I looked at it and said, man, it says 2035. And I'm like, 2035? I'll be 60 some years old, right? But the reality is that, hey, I don't have we used to have the green one. I don't have the green ID and I don't get the blue one no more. So reality is now that I'm transitioning out. And then two, when I go base, the base is still kind of the same because they, you go to salute you. But I think what really, when I go to some appointments and I was sitting behind everybody else and I had to wait, because, you're a civilian now, you're not a military, you're not a warrant no more. Civilian, that got man appointments. Appointments is longer now than it was when I was in uniform. So reality set in September 1st that we really, hey man, you're transition. But the more people around, like I was, people I now, they both Master Chief, one Senior Chief retired, and I've been there a long time. So it really, more and more we talk about it, and I for one stepped away from the Navy. I didn't go to the base. I didn't do nothing. I've been retired 9 months now, right? So I stayed away from the base. I stayed away from this. I didn't go to commissary like that. But now I'm like, I'm going to commissary. I go to commissary. I go to Pier Beach. I go deal with all the old retirees and see them and speak. But also, I think for me is now that that I'm able in the space now. I'm able to understand that I have transitioned out of the Navy, and I still can use my benefits, and I still can help others.
Would you say that that mental space that you took away from the military and away from everything allowed you to almost miss it and want to reconnect back faster than what other people would normally want to do?
I miss it anyway. I would lie to you and say I didn't miss the military. I missed this piece of it. But I don't think. I think for me it was just a hiatus away from it. Just me stepping away. I know I had to step away, and I wouldn't tie up in the military like say who I at the same time. I stepped away because I just knew I needed that mental break because it was mental. Again, when I told you it was mental, Chris, about what I was dealing with. So, but in all honest is that I didn't do that. But in my mind, I thought I did. But you know, we things. It's a transition. What they call a transition. You transition from one thing to the next. But again, dealing with people like yourself, like you and Chris, Yogi and Chris, you know, you guys have been on a couple podcasts. I've been on, you know, talking about different things and talked about spiritual. You know, I was on two podcasts talking about my faith. You know, and I'm like, man, so it helped me with my transition and it made it easier in my transition. And my wife Tony always tells me, said, when you're having your dreams, wake up, pull your Bible out. Now I'm starting to realize that helps. Also, too, I read my book, you know, and that's so. I hope to answer your question, yo. Yeah,
You did. With that, David, you're always going to be part of the tribe. You're welcome here. I want to thank you for sharing this time with us and all this knowledge. Is there anything that we missed that we didn't cover that you'd like to share with our audience?
You know what? Let's see, I wrote some stuff down earlier. Give me a second here.
There's that W05 aspect out there. You gotta put those glasses on. He's gonna be like, okay, let me check the good book.
I know. You know, I was thinking about this, and you said before transition, we talked about preparation, but something I didn't talk about was networking. We network able to get stuff we need, but we didn't realize the networking we need to do to build a strong network both inside and outside the military, right? And then also the flexibility in careers. I don't have a career. My career, well, I do have a career. I didn't go back to 9 to 5, you know, but you know, in what you're trying to do, with that process, be patient with it. But also, I would say this: a couple of things: planning ahead, seeking education and training. You know, never building a support network, embracing change. We have to embrace the change that we're going through. You know, that's like 200 pounds, or 300 pounds, you lose 100 pounds, you're 200, right? So, you know, your clothes change, right? So you had to adjust to that, just like life. You had to adjust to your size. So our size went from dealing with everybody's problem to dealing with our own. And then what is another one? Staying positive and being resilient. That's the biggest keys that I would leave people with, and utilizing available resources. We have to use our resources. And resources can be people, places, or things. And we have to be able to do that. So that's what I would leave them with. I had to go back and talk about a couple things.
Beautiful. That David, again, thank you for coming on the show. We would love to bring you back and then dive into dissect one of your books, right? And then just make that episode about just that. Um, Seriously, thank you for taking this time. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing with us. And our private conversation, I mean, it's very inspiring to see, regardless of rank, regardless of years in the military, we all go through a very similar process, right? Some of us are aware of it sooner than others. Um, as you mentioned, embracing it and understanding the change is what helps us move forward with it. But again, thank you so much, David.
So Yogi, one other thing too. I'm trying to take your show. I know it's time to get off, but something I thought about. You just hit it. You just said. A thing I thought about was being humble. You know, people always be humble or be humbled, and I live that. And I think that's something that helped me with my process too.
Yeah, David. Hey, thanks. You said thanks for coming on here, brother. To everybody that's out there listening, we got David on here. He served 33 years. He was Chief Warrant Officer 5, which makes him a unicorn. I know he doesn't look like a unicorn, but he is one. So when I say it's not all rainbows and unicorns out there, this time it's going to be the only time that I say you found a unicorn. It's David.
Appreciate it.
Yes, everybody, it's not all rainbows and unicorns out there unless you're David. It's your transition. Take charge of it. MIl2Vet.